Hi everyone, my name is Charlie Thompson. I am your fitness professional and we will be talking about my client Dylan. I have this microphone because my sound wasn't working, so hopefully you can hear me now. But my client is a 52-year-old male who has been sedentary for most of his life and he has a family history of hypertension. He came in because he wanted to improve his overall health as well as just be better. So I performed an intake assessment and exercise test. I'm going to break down his resting value as well as what happened during his exercises. And then we're going to talk about the changes we would expect during the 12 weeks of training. So at rest, Dylan is blood pressure is 142 over 92, which places him at stage 2 hypertension. His resting heart rate is 74 beats per minute, and his BMI is 29.7, and his waist circumference is 42 inches. All of this together gives me a pretty good picture of his cardiovascular risk. So before even getting through the details, these numbers already tell me that Dylan has an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, especially because of the combination of the high blood pressure and the high body fat in his sedentary lifestyle. Now, the blood pressure. It is mainly determined by two things, which is your cardio output and your total peripheral resistance. So, cardio output is the amount of blood the heart pumps per minute, and that influenced by the heart rate and stroke volume. And then total peripheral resistance is basically how tight or constricted the blood flow or the blood vessels are. So if either cardiac output is high or blood vessels are more constricted, blood pressure is going to increase. So for Dylan specifically, there are multiple physiological reasons on why his blood pressure is elevated. First, because of his sedentary lifestyle, for most of his life, his blood vessels are most likely compliant, meaning that they're stiffer, and they don't expand easy. When blood vessels are stiff, it increases resistance, which raises blood pressure. Secondly, he most likely has a level of endothelial dysfunction. The endothelium is a inner lining of the blood vessels, and it plays a major role in releasing nitric oxide, which helps with vasodilation. If nitric oxide production is reduced, the vessels do not relax as well, which keeps blood pressure elevated. Another factor is increased sympathetic nervous system activity. Since he's not physically active, his body may stay in a more fight or flight state, which increases his heart rate, constricts blood vessels, and raises his blood pressure. His body composition also plays a role as well, with a waist circumference of 42. This suggests that he has an increased visceral fat, which is strongly linked to hypertension. This type of fat increases inflammation and also can affect hormone regulation, which contributes to higher blood pressure. And then another thing, of course, which is his family history of hypertension, meaning that his genetic component is something to think about. So he already has a higher risk because of his family. So when you put all of that together, his heart is basically working harder to pump blood through resistant blood vessels, which explains why his resting blood pressure is elevated. Now, looking at Dylan's exercise, we see that his systolic blood pressure increased from 142 at rest to 176 during exercise, while his systolic pressure slightly decreased from 92 to around 92, and that's slightly lower. Um, this is actually a normal and expected response to exercise. So during exercise, especially aerobic, your body aerobic exercise like walking or treadmills, your body needs to deliver more oxygen to the muscles. To do that, cardio output increases, which is driven by the increase in both heart rate and stroke volume, as well as systolic blood pressure increases because the heart is pushing more blood out with each pump. So, with each increase in the systolic pressure, it is expected and actually necessary to meet the metabolic demands of exercise. On the other hand, systolic blood pressure typically stays either the same or slightly decreases. And for that reason, this is because of vasodilation in working muscles. The blood pressure it expand or blood vessels expand to allow more blood flow, which reduces resistance. So through that, more blood is being pumped, the vessels are opening up, and at the same time, which prevents diastolic pressure rising, which is a good thing. In Dylan's case, the slight decrease in diastolic pressure is actually a good sign that his body is able to regulate blood flow properly during exercise. So if his diastolic pressure had increased significantly, that would indicate that there's an abnormal response, likely excessive peripheral resistance, or an underlying cardiovascular issue. Whew. But based on his value, his response to exercise is within normal. So as looking at his recovery values, his heart rate, blood pressure gradually returns to baseline, which is another important indicator. Recovery heart rate is especially important because it reflects how the parasympathetic nervous system can take over after exercise. In Dylan's case, his heart rate drops from 128 during exercise down to 96 after 5 minutes and continues to decrease, which shows his ability to recover. And this is definitely something that could improve with training. Now, if I worked with Dylan consistently over 12 weeks, we would expect several physiological adaptations. There would be a decrease in his resting blood pressure first. First thing, it would be a decrease in his resting blood pressure. This happens because regular exercise improves the endothelial function and increases the nitric oxide production, which allows blood vessels to dilate more easily. Exercise also reduces total peripheral resistance over time, meaning that the heart does not have to work as hard to push blood through the vessels, through the body. So realistically, we could see that his blood pressure would drop from 142 over 92 to closer to something like 125 to 130 over 80. Also, we could see that we can expect that his resting heart rate would decrease as well. This is because of the increase in stroke volume, meaning that the heart pumps more blood per beat. So instead of beating faster, the heart becomes more efficient and can maintain the same cardio output with fewer beats. Another thing would be improved body composition, which with consistent exercise and possibly some nutritional change, we can expect the reduction in body fat, especially visceral fat. We need that gone. This is important because reducing abdominal body or abdominal fat is strongly linked to improvement in blood pressure over time and overall cardiovascular health. We can also see an improvement in his exercise capacity. At the same workload, his heart rate would be lower and he would be able to exercise for longer periods of time. This is due to improvement in oxygen delivery and utilization, including increase in the mitochondrial density and capillary networks in the muscles. His recovery heart rate would improve as well. This reflects the autonomic balance, which increases the parasympathetic activity and reduces sympathetic dominance. Basically, his body becomes better at calming itself down after stress. Overall, his cardiovascular system will become more efficient. The heart pumps more efficiently, the blood vessels function better, and the entire system works with less strain. In conclusion, overall, exercise training would significantly improve Dylan's health by lowering his blood pressure, improving his heart function, and reducing his risk for cardiovascular disease. This case really highlights how important exercise can be, especially for someone who has lived in sedentary for most of their life. And as a fitness professional, this is exactly the type of client we can make a huge impact on. Thank you.